So the Supergirl trailer had a variety of reactions, and this was one of them I was suggested to respond to. I've been told to respond to JesterBell for quite a while, and I suppose we'll find out why in a moment.
Hello everyone, female Frodo Baggins here. And can you guess my reaction to the latest Supergirl trailer?
Probably something insane and out of touch with reality, but I'm open to being pleasantly surprised.
I hate everything about this trailer, this concept.
Yeah, I figured as such. She rambles on for quite a bit, so I'm just gonna skip ahead to when, points about the actual trailer are being made.
But in the midst of all of that, my opinion is always that the main problem of why people don't go to movies anymore is the bad movies. We wouldn't be able to be on YouTube and have so many channels cover bad movies. I always say the problem is bad movies. Bad movies mean less people want to go to the theater.
Okay, but this is a trailer, not a movie. I don't know why so many people on YouTube seem to think that they're time travelers all of a sudden, but when I try to explain why I think a movie is bad, I wait until, the actual movie is out, so I can actually watch the movie, because that's what you're supposed to use to support your claims. Not that I'd expect this person to understand that concept, considering she labeled everyone excited for the movie as bots. I had fun ratioing you on Twitter, by the way.
So let's get into the marketing behind James Gunn's Supergirl. I know that Craig Gillespie, who did do a very good movie with I, Tonya before, I know that he's technically the director of this movie, but make no mistake, this is a James Gunn movie. It is James Gunn through and through, in the same way that all movies that come from Marvel are essentially just Kevin Feige projects. James Gunn is just hiring yes men to make his project.
So, we went from it's James Gunn's Supergirl to acknowledging that it's directed by someone else and therefore someone else's vision, to calling it James Gunn's Supergirl anyway. Now, it's still pathetic when people make this claim that this is a James Gunn movie because they didn't bother to check who actually made it, but that's less egregious compared to knowing it's directed by someone else, yet calling it a James Gunn film anyway. How does that make any logical sense? Also, your comparison is wrong. Iron Man is a completely different movie from Winter Soldier. The Avengers is a completely different movie from Guardians of the Galaxy. The directing style of those movies are blatantly different from one another. Kevin Feige being a producer doesn't mean they're not their own movies.
Let's talk about the marketing behind Supergirl. Supergirl was already said by James Gunn to be like Guardians. Oh, what a surprise. That's all the guy can ever make.
James Gunn isn't making this movie, and the reason he compared it to Guardians of the Galaxy is because of it being a space adventure. James Gunn's The Suicide Squad is not a space adventure. I've only seen season 1, but Peacemaker season 1 is not a space adventure. Superman is not a space adventure. Now feel free to tell me if Peacemaker season 2 or Creature Commandos are space adventures, but I'm inclined to believe that they're not. And by the way, James Gunn didn't invent space adventures. Those kinds of movies have been made for years before his career even started. To add on, even if this was heavily similar to Guardians of the Galaxy, lacking originality doesn't inherently make it a bad movie. It isn't an inherent issue to be inspired by older works or to reference them in some capacity.
So they put out this poster and this little GIF the other day advertising the teaser trailer, and the poster says, "Truth, justice, whatever." Wow, so edgy, James. You really got that edge there.
It's almost as if they're using a variation to contrast Superman's character. It establishes that she has less of a grasp on her ideals than Superman does. Are character flaws bad to establish now? Because if she didn't have any character flaws, I'm betting people would go on about how she's a Mary Sue, like when it was popular to do that around the Star Wars sequel era. But when they do establish character flaws, that's just bad apparently. Now make no mistake, this is not to say that you can't criticize characters for overly lacking in flaws. I think that's valid to criticize. But to criticize the existence of character flaws is a betrayal of those standards people have claimed to believe in.
Okay, before we get into it, before I go on a rant, okay, this is the problem with the premise of this movie and what we see in the trailer as well. It's advertising itself to being the cynical sister to the Superman movie.
See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. There is no substantive criticism, it's just listing character flaws that she noticed in Supergirl. Do you know how stories operate? Do you know why they make characters flawed? Don't answer that.
Like, it's supposed to be the answer to altruistic superheroes, that Supergirl is cynical and depressed and she's drinking.
Nobody's saying that's the answer to altruistic superheroes. Depicting a character doesn't mean the movie is saying we should be like that character.
And and I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. In the trailer, she says, you know, he believes in the good of people, and she believes in the truth, which is all people are just terrible and stuff like that.
That's not the same statement, and I have no clue how you arrived at that conclusion. Just because you don't see the good in everyone, doesn't mean you think everyone is bad. Superman may see the good in Lex Luthor, but Supergirl wouldn't. That doesn't mean she thinks everybody is Lex Luthor. You know, it's interesting how she makes this point about how bad movies are harming cinema, but what about bad reviewing of movies? Couldn't I just as easily argue that your inability to read basic messages is poisoning the perception of what's good or bad? If you're going to hold the standard to movies, why not hold yourself to that same standard? And at the very least, try to understand what the movie is even going for, even if you don't like it. And part of that involves waiting for the movie itself, instead of making baseless assumptions about the marketing.
Here is the problem with that. Here's the problem with the tagline, truth, justice, whatever, is that if we were living in a time where we were getting a lot of altruistic characters, whether it was superheroes or just heroic characters in general, then yeah, it would make sense to do this movie. It would make sense to do a cynical take, a quote-unquote edgier take, at least edgier compared to the movies we've been given. But we never got the altruism first.
The Superman movie is about the value of kindness for everyone, and everything Superman does is driven by altruism. His character arc is centered around the idea that your choices make you who you are, and Superman makes the most altruistic ones in the face of Luthor's cruelty. If we need to step outside of the Superman movie, the most recent Spider-Man movie challenges Miles to choose between saving his dad or the entire world, and he chooses to find a way to save both. The Spider-Man movie before that is focused on Peter giving supervillains second chances instead of sending them to die. The latest Batman movie is about Bruce learning to inspire hope over vengeance. Now I could go on about these recent entries, but I think the point is clear. We already have more altruistic heroes in recent media, despite what JesterBell claims.
James Gunn's Superman felt like he did not want to make the movie. He didn't want to do Superman, and I will never forget that quote before he signed on to it that said that Superman was not a character that enticed him. Krypto was what he finally got to get himself to work on the project, because that's what they wanted him to do.
So I got a bit curious and I decided to fact check this claim. James Gunn initially wasn't ready to commit to Superman because he was still feeling the trauma of his Marvel firing, and needed to take a step back to focus on what he wanted to do next. This wasn't about him not caring about Superman as a character. His ideas for the Suicide Squad simply arrived to him quicker, and he wanted to work on it once he was sure about its story. A later statement shows James Gunn saying that he was already trying to figure out which angle he wanted to go with Superman, since he was looking to make something that people haven't seen in a Superman movie. Krypto was mentioned alongside kaiju, robots, monsters, and magic as examples of elements James wanted to put in the Superman movie. He didn't make the Superman movie just because of Krypto.
The Superman movie is like a speed run where there's barely any time to breathe. It never wants to stay with anything. Superman gets, put in prison early on in the film so that James Gunn can play around with characters like Mr. Terrific and Guy Gardner that he actually wants to play around with and do more silly antics and jokes and...
Superman gets arrested 50 minutes into the movie and escapes around the 1 hour and 16 minute mark. He spends 26 minutes in prison. This is a small part of the movie, and we still get scenes with Superman in the prison, like when Lex's cruelty is on full display, or the escape scene that shows how impressive Superman is. But okay, James Gunn didn't care about Superman because he has other characters in the movie.
Jokes that were considered edgy and dirty for a Marvel movie back in 2014 because James Gunn never left Guardians of the Galaxy. It was so clear he did not want to actually do Superman.
You haven't shown a shred of evidence for this.
And Superman's character development, is so shallow in the movie. It just does not feel actually sincere. It felt like James Gunn was just trying to create an answer for Zack Snyder and say, okay, I made a hopeful Superman.
That's not the point of his character arc. The point of his character arc is about how your choices make you who you are, no matter where you come from. How is that an anti-Superman message? How does that prove that he doesn't care about the character and simply wants to go after Snyder's version? You just made that up.
He spent barely any time on that character. There is not a lot of depth in the movie. He just did not want to do Superman. So for me, he didn't even do truth, justice, and the American way. He would never say that.
So saying a slogan is what you need to clap at the movie? Can we make more substantive character criticism here?
So to me, to now say, oh, this is the time where we're doing the alternate to that, we're doing the cynical version of Superman, we're doing the one that is grungy and edgy, and the trailer opens with a dog peeing on something. Ooh, isn't this gross and edgy? Like, it's like you never did the altruism and the wholesomeness of Superman in the first place.
Your choices, Clark. That's what makes you who you are.
I wake up every morning and despite not knowing what to do, I put one foot in front of the other and I try to make the best choices I can.
Am I the only one who did the reading?
He could not help himself with the first Superman, you know, whether he's joking about Superman harems or Guy Gardner's body count.
Having jokes in the movie doesn't prove that Superman isn't altruistic. Make a real point rooted in reality.
He could not let go of that part of himself for that movie. We never got the wholesome, altruistic Superman movie. And so when we go to Supergirl, it's like, this actually is not the answer. This is just like, there was a little curtain over the Superman movie and now the curtain's off. That's what it is. They're not really opposite takes. It's just Supergirl is the movie that James Gunn actually wants to produce, whereas Superman, he was barely masking himself. That's the only difference here.
That is genuinely insane. If he wanted to make the Supergirl movie so bad and didn't want to make the Superman movie, then why did he direct Superman and not Supergirl? Your point immediately doesn't make sense.
So yeah, truth, justice, whatever, that doesn't work when you didn't actually go with truth, justice, and the American way in the first movie.
The movie shows him representing truth as a reporter. He makes sure Lex pays for his crimes. He releases everyone Lex has captured so they can pursue freedom. Just because he didn't say the slogan you wanted him to say, doesn't mean he doesn't act on what those ideals mean.
So, but then, oh my goodness, that GIF literally shows Supergirl wearing the same headphones and Walkman as Star-Lord. I'm not making this up. It's the same, you know, orange headphones and Walkman that are nostalgia from the 80s, because who uses cord headphones anymore? We're getting that again. He is making no attempt to even mask that this is just a copy of Guardians of the Galaxy.
Referencing something isn't copying something. Your intro literally has you referencing Frodo Baggins. You've made that part of your identity, but that doesn't mean you're copying Lord of the Rings now, does it?
Supergirl is literally an insert for Star-Lord all over again. And then we get to the trailer itself. And, I was over it. I was over it when it started. If you want to get me to see a movie, a CGI dog, a badly CGI dog peeing on something is not gonna make me want to go see it.
Well, given that you are evidently entering this discussion in bad faith, I don't think anything was ever going to entice you to watch it.
And I think there are a lot of disingenuous people online that just want to hate on the film. They don't want to make it better, right? They want to hate on it.
But that's the thing about the trailer, is the trailer looked like pee. It's like, that is the first image they put in your mind when it starts, and of course they have the 80s retro music with Blondie, of course, because this is just Guardians of the Galaxy all over again. And you go to space locations that are very much Guardians of the Galaxy, and it's...
Going to space locations isn't exclusive to Guardians of the Galaxy. Why do people keep saying this? There's a difference between copying something versus sharing qualities.
It's embarrassing that is all James Gunn knows how to do. But yeah, you set the tone here, and it's just, everything has just a yellow pee filter over it, and there's drinking and depression and cynicism, and it's like, yeah, that's exactly what audiences want to see today.
Your definition of a pee filter is simply utilizing warmer colors. This is not a compelling argument. That's not to say you can't criticize the color grading at all, but simply calling it piss isn't an argument. Simply listing down ideas within the story isn't an argument either. You seem to be struggling to make a real argument against the trailer.
Once again, if this was an answer to, like, overly optimistic superhero movies, then that would be one thing, but it's not. Like,
why does this need to be an answer to certain superhero movies? I engage with stories because they have stories to tell, not because it has to respond to other movies out there. If I really wanted to look at a response to a movie, I'd look for a movie review.
We've already had so many cynical characters.
Okay, we've also had so many altruistic characters. What's your point? Tell me why these character qualities are bad for stories.
We've already had so many superhero movies that don't understand what a hero is, and that where the heroes are actually selfish. It's not interesting to see another one. It's not interesting to see a Supergirl who has this incredible power and is out as one of the last Kryptonians, is out there wasting her life away, drinking and getting into fights.
How is it not interesting to show the side effects that losing Krypton has on her? Shouldn't stories focus on the flaws of our characters instead of glossing over them? Make a real argument as to why this premise is harmful to the story. You haven't done that yet.
It's not enticing, and it's like, we've seen it a million times over now.
Okay, and we've seen Superman be altruistic a million times over now. Now that Supergirl is going in a more unique direction, that's bad?
But yeah, it looked awful, and it's just like, James Gunn cannot make anything new. It's all, he cannot escape that one movie he made in 2014.
It's funny how you keep repeating this point when you run out of things to say, then accuse James Gunn of not being able to do anything new. None of your arguments have actually held up, and we're about halfway through your video. The clock is ticking.
With the 80s retro music and a space setting.
80s music and being in space are broad elements. You can have very different movies in spite of these similarities. I wouldn't even say the Guardians movies are copying each other, since they all tell largely different stories and capture these characters at different stages in their lives. But you have this childish perspective on movies where you see similar elements and call it the same.
That was trying to be the edgy answer to the other Marvel movies. And that's the problem, is James Gunn's version of edgy is what it was to be edgy compared to a Marvel movie back in 2014, because he's never evolved since then. Because, you know, when Guardians of the Galaxy came out, it was different. It was a risk. It was edgy for a Marvel movie. Not edgy for a movie in general. It just went a little further with the dirty humor and the swearing than a regular Marvel movie, which were just for families, would be at the time. Guardians was still family movies, though. So it's like, this guy is not nearly as edgy as he thinks he is. It's just, he's just stuck in over 10 years ago right now about what would have been considered a bit more cynical and edgy back then.
Why does any of this matter? A movie doesn't have to be edgy to be good. A movie simply needs to function on its own and succeed at what it's aiming for, assuming that its premise isn't flawed.
So when I look at this film, I think, well, the visuals make me think of Black Adam because of all the yellow that you're treated to. I'm not interested in any of the premise because I've seen it a million times before, with the humor and with the cynicism and all that from James Gunn.
Humor is not a premise. Cynicism is a character trait, not a premise for a story. Can you make a real argument instead of this regurgitated garbage?
And it's like, it's so cliched at this point to do a cynical take on superheroes, and that's all James Gunn can do. But here's the thing. James Gunn is the biggest hack, I think, in Hollywood. I'm gonna go that far, because we keep talking that everything he makes is just Guardians of the Galaxy. He made Guardians of the Galaxy 3 times with 3 movies. Then he made the Suicide Squad, which was Guardians of the Galaxy. Then he made Superman, which was a masked Guardians of the Galaxy. He even gave himself his own Guardians team so he wouldn't have to be stuck with Superman. Then he does Peacemaker, which is more Guardians of the Galaxy. And now he does Supergirl, which is more Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh my god. I'm dealing with a 5-year-old here. Oh, there's 2 or 3 elements that are vaguely similar? That's Guardians of the Galaxy. Oh, a character is shown to have flaws that are not normally seen in superheroes? Well, that's just cynical and therefore the same as Guardians of the Galaxy. Get some standards for how you criticize media. Seriously, I'm gonna skip ahead until anything new is said.
But Guardians of the Galaxy, the first movie, wasn't even his idea. Now, this is something that actually has been getting out there for a while now. It's been talked for years, and it was really shown a light on in the book about the reign of Marvel Studios. But James Gunn's narrative about the creation of the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie has always been that, yeah, Nicole Perlman, she wrote the script, and then he completely rewrote the script into his vision and gave it, you know, what Guardians of the Galaxy is, with the music and you know, the characters and all of that kind of stuff. But what has been said behind the scenes is, what the actual truth happened is, Nicole Perlman came up with the Guardians script, and she came up with the idea of Star-Lord having an attachment to the music that his mother gave him, having the Walkman and all of that kind of stuff. And that James Gunn essentially bullied her out of the project and took the script and, yeah, made some changes based on the characters that would be in it, like Nova was taken out, Thanos was changed to another villain, but that she came up with a lot of the core ideas of what Guardians of the Galaxy was, and it was not as much of the overhaul as James Gunn would like you to think it is.
There's a couple things to say here. 1, even if what you're saying is true, this has nothing to do with whether or not Supergirl is a good movie, and James Gunn didn't even write or direct the damn thing. Yeah, that's worthy of criticism if true, but there needs to be some relevance here. 2, showing me a claim that someone makes doesn't prove that said claim is true. I'm not saying it can't be true, I'm not saying it's 100% false, but you need to show me something more concrete. I'm not gonna go by someone's word about it. Also, just because he allegedly took 2 ideas from someone doesn't mean he doesn't have any original ideas, because this concerns one character out of the many in the Guardians movies.
Now, this part is not as confirmed. I've just heard through the grapevine that also Joss Whedon might have had a hand of what Guardians of the Galaxy was, because Joss Whedon was more involved in, terms of being a consultant with Marvel Studios movies back then. Now, that part is not confirmed.
Then why include it?
But I say all of that to say is all of this James Gunn copying himself is all over a concept that looks likely was not even his in the first place. A concept that he essentially stole from somebody else and bullied his way into getting credit for it.
But you need evidence, not just what you hear from the grapevine, or quotes from people making allegations.
But embarrassingly, it's gonna be 12 years since that movie once Supergirl comes out in 2026. That's all he can make anymore. And that's why I call this guy just the biggest hack in Hollywood.
Alright, skipping ahead until we get something new. It's funny how James Gunn isn't even the director or writer of this movie, yet she focuses most of this video on James Gunn. Thank you for wasting your gullible audience's time.
Back to the Supergirl trailer, yeah, it's like, AI is taking over Hollywood, and it's unfortunate. I disagree that AI is gonna be the magic people think that it is, and that it's gonna make, create our heart's desire. I completely disagree with that. But it's like Hollywood has wanted it to be that way for so long. It's like AI can only ever regurgitate things from the past, but that's already what Hollywood is doing.
So instead of going back to the Supergirl trailer like she just said, she goes on a tangent about generative AI. I don't think you have much of a leg to stand on about repeating things when all you've been doing is repeating the same terrible point you've already made, skipping again until she finally makes a point that she hasn't repeated.
It just is not interesting to me, so I think that this is just gonna wind up being overlooked by audiences. If Superman couldn't get to 700 million, I think this would be lucky to be a 300 million movie. I just don't think anyone is going to watch this.
It's interesting how specific 700 million is. It's almost as if that's a tactic to make the film seem unsuccessful when 600 million is still a box office success. That's basically the end of the video. Nothing else that hasn't been said before gets said moving forward. It's really strange to me when people like JesterBell pretend like they actually have standards when it's apparent that they have little standards for the things that they're criticizing. If you're reaching a point where you say it's bad to depict character flaws and fail to explain it with any depth or accuracy, then I think it's time to rethink what you're saying. That's all I've got for now. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you disagree with anything, feel free to join my Disagreement Day streams. If you want to suggest any response videos for me, join my main Discord server in the description, and there's a text channel where you can do exactly that. That's all I have for now. See you all later. Goodbye.